Operator logic. I watched a sign shop lose profit overnight, and it started with one archive capture event. The evidence was sitting in front of me, an invoice close-up with one line highlighted in warning red, reprint due to archive capture issue. This wasn't a mysterious customer complaint. It was one process failure that turned retrievable files into reprint required. And the cash math was ugly, because everyone focused on the replacement materials, not the timeline and labor stack that hit the cash drawer first. Here's the real question you asked. What's the exact cash difference between the saved archive capture and the reprint rework it triggered? I'm going to show the numbers. Sign shops obsess over archives for good reasons. Proof, versioning, speed, and when something changes, ink, substrate measurement, they want the exact file that produced the original. Archives are supposed to prevent rekeying, prevent wrong fonts, and speed approvals. But here's how archives can still kill cash flow. Save doesn't mean usable. A capture can archive the wrong version, land in the wrong folder, or be permission restricted, so the shop thinks it's protected, but production later hits a dead end right when install date deadlines are non-negotiable. Let's walk the job timeline. First, the customer approved the design file, operator exports a production-ready PDF, and the shop creates the job locally. Next, the operator triggers an archive capture for long-term retrieval. That capture gets logged as successful. Then production starts. They attempt the cut print for the install date. Everything looks normal, until the install date arrives and the shop tries to repull the archived version for the second run or the final verification. At that moment, retrieval works, but the file isn't usable. It opens blank in the production software, or it's a different file name with outdated dimensions. The shop discovers the version mismatch only when the clock is already running, so the rework trigger is simple. What was supposed to be retrievable wasn't usable when the install date arrived. Now the cash math nobody checks. The shop had an expected gross margin on the original run. On paper, they should have earned 52% gross margin from the pricing package. For this job, the contract price was $10,000. Expected gross profit, $5,200. What actually happened after the archive failure? They had a reprint. They had to redo setup and output, and they also paid rush scheduling because install windows were slipping. So here's the exact cash difference. Saved archive capture did not cost much directly. No material charge and no additional vendor fees at capture time. The cash impact shows up later as reprint cost. Reprint and rework totals were materials and vendor consumables, $1,650. Machine time and operator time, $1,420. Rush setup fees, $480. Installer redo time, $740. And internal overhead for the second visit and paperwork, $210. Total cash outlay, $4,500. Now, compare that to the expected gross profit. Before the reprint, they would have kept $5,200 gross profit. After the reprint, gross profit becomes $5,200 minus $4,500, which equals $700. Exact cash difference. $5,200 expected minus $700 actual equals $4,500. That's the immediate profit wipe on the job. One archive capture event didn't cause a small error. It turned a near full margin job into a low margin job by $4,500 cash difference. And here's what makes operators angry and relieved at the same time. It wasn't bad luck. It was predictable. One process event created a predictable cash leak. Overlooked costs weren't just materials. The reprint consumed production time that couldn't be used for the next scheduled job. The shop also lost an installer slot, which forced rush scheduling. And there's a hidden cost. Customer rework tolerance. If the customer requires proof and sign off again, approvals add days, and those days multiply downtime across the shop. Additionally, the operator didn't just spend time printing. They spent time troubleshooting the retrieved file, then remeasuring, then re-exporting. Every step is billable to the shop, even when it isn't billable to the customer. Cash flow impact hits first, even if profit loss feels later. The bank and cash drawer see the hit immediately because vendors need to be paid for materials, and rush fees are due fast. Profit calculations come later, but the cash drain shows up immediately through purchase orders, overtime, and rebooking. So even if the profit report is next month, the shop feels it this week. The drawer is thinner, the next job deposit is delayed, and the owner starts doing math with a calculator instead of a workflow. Now let's map the root cause mechanically. One capture event produced an unusable version. That can happen in several ways, and it's usually one of these. The capture saved an older file name because of overwrite rules. The folder routing pointed to the wrong job ID, so it got archived under a different directory. The archived file had permission restrictions, so production software couldn't read embedded profiles. Or the archive captured a pre-flight lacking file that opens, but fails during output. In this case, the operator's log said capture succeeded, but the archive naming rule appended a timestamp, and production expected the base job name only. The retrieval tool looked for the base name, found the older one, and production used the wrong dimensions. Here's an operator checklist for the 60 seconds after any archive capture. First, immediately test retrieval. Not opens on your PC. Open it in the actual production software that will run output. Second, verify version identity. Check file name rules. If there's a timestamp, confirm the retrieval system expects it. Look for a version hash or document properties that match the job. Third, confirm install day access. Archive permissions must allow production and installers review tools to read the file. If you can't open it from the workstation the shop uses on install day, the archive isn't real protection. Fourth, run a quick pre-flight check. Confirm dimensions, color profile, and whether links are embedded or broken. Do that, and you convert archives from trust me into controlled production input. So the takeaway is blunt. Archives aren't a backup you can ignore. They're a controlled production input. One failure can turn into a margin wipeout. If you run a sign shop, don't just log archive captures. Verify usability at the moment you captured it. Because in the real world, the shop doesn't lose money when the mistake is discovered. It loses money when the reprint is inevitable. If you want, I can also give you a one-page archive verification form you can print and use with every capture, so this doesn't happen twice. Subscribe to Operator Logic, and I'll post the checklist template next.